Chapter 7. Google Earth Engine, a free scientific platform, offers satellite imagery from every corner of the world, available to anyone curious enough to look. You could type in any location, your childhood neighborhood, a vast Australian farm, and pull up images taken over time, like a digital scrapbook of the Earth. Garrett, with his relentless curiosity and plenty of time on his hands, logged in, entered the coordinates of the fields he'd been analyzing, and began exploring the catalog of satellite images available from two primary sources, Landsat and Sentinel. The satellite images, captured over days, weeks, and years, gave him a snapshot of each field's life cycle, one picture after another, revealing how the land changed over time. Each image showed the same field, captured in perfect, crisp detail, enough to reveal every row of planted crops, the texture of the earth, even signs of seasonal shifts. Garrett ensured that the quality of these images would serve his purpose, studying each for the right amount of detail. Fortunately, the images were clear enough that he could see even subtle changes between one capture and the next. Within hours, Garrett had built a simple program to connect with Google Earth Engine. Using open-source tools as his foundation and adding a few adjustments, he made a system that could pull in the satellite images automatically, retrieving snapshots of the fields he wanted to study and storing them locally on his computer. Now he had what he needed, a complete visual history of the fields over a growing season. Next, Garrett found an open-source algorithm, something other researchers had developed and freely shared, that could help him compare these images. The algorithm would take each daily or weekly image of a field and analyze it for small changes over time, such as shifts in plant growth patterns, crop health, and other visual markers that might tell the story of why these crops were failing. Garrett had expected that this historical data would reveal fields that didn't grow properly or crops that gradually withered and died over time. But what he saw was nothing like that. In the images of the high-loss areas, where farmers were losing significant portions of their yield, Garrett had anticipated seeing crops that struggled and slowly faded. Instead, he found a disturbing pattern. In many of these areas, crops didn't just fade. They were physically crushed. Between one image and the next, vast patches of the fields were visibly trampled, entire sections flattened as though something massive had passed through. The crop loss wasn't gradual or subtle. It was stark and sudden. From one moment to the next, healthy fields turned into patches of broken, flattened plants. For the first time, Garrett felt a shiver of uncertainty. This wasn't the drought, a fungus, or a pest gnawing at the edges of the crops. Something else was at work, and whatever it was, it left no subtlety in its wake. Garrett scrolled through the images, flipping back and forth between frames, until something unusual caught his eye, a gray-brown blur near the edge of one of the fields. In the next image, the exact area had transformed into a patch of trampled land. Intrigued, he zoomed in, increasing the resolution bit by bit until the shape became unmistakable. 2 large hind legs and a long, muscular tail. Kangaroos, specifically the western grey kangaroo, one of Australia's most common and most troublesome species. Now, if Garrett had paid attention during his training calls, he might have known that the Department of Agriculture had already analyzed causes of crop loss, with the kangaroo destruction ranking high on the list. The western grey kangaroo was well known among Australian farmers for its destructive habits. This species had been the nemesis of crops across the region, with farmers resorting to costly fencing and tree guards to keep them at bay. But fencing often wasn't a perfect solution. Kangaroos, as you know, can jump very high, rendering most fences laughably ineffective. And the numbers weren't in the farmers' favor either. In the Hills and Fleurieu region alone, there are over 47,000 western grey kangaroos, all feeding and trampling their way across the landscape. Kangaroos, it turned out, were classified as impact-causing species, and for good reason. With their grazing and relentless foot traffic, they left whole fields ravaged in a matter of days, their massive footprints marking every square foot of flattened crops. But enough about kangaroos. This story is about Garrett and his role in Stella's ultimate demise. He looked up from his laptop, eager to tell Martin about his discovery, only to realize that the office was dark, the cubicles empty. It was well past closing time. The realization that kangaroos were the hidden culprits sparked something deep within him, something that would lead to a night of intense focus, sleep deprivation, and a single-minded obsession to do something about it.